Toby's blogs. Today I'm going to be reviewing one of Big Finish's latest releases, which is The Seventh Doctor, The Last Day. Now I started listening to it this morning, and I listened to 4 parts, and then I had a break and I listened to the last 2 parts. So I've listened to it all in one day. It was a bit over the place, I think. One, it wasn't really what I was expecting. It is part 1 of a 2 box set releases. So this is the first release, and then the second release is going to come out later in the year, which also I think goes against it as well, because this set doesn't really... I thought we might have the first part and it'll go through and it will conclude something at the end. And so you've got going through one box set, it's all something's going to happen and then finish, and then we're going to move on to the next box set, which then it will start up again with the same sort of storyline, but then go on like a different sort of arc. I just think these 2 box sets, well, I haven't listened to the second one, of course, because it's not out yet, but I just feel like this was like you're meant to listen to them together, and that the part 1 then continues on to part 2, and you're meant to just listen to them as a whole set. I haven't listened to much of the Sylvester McCoy stories on Big Finish. So, like other people have said in other reviews, they were like, well, I don't know who this person is, or I don't know who that person is, or I don't know who that person is. And I felt the same going into this, because unless you're like a hardcore Big Finish Doctor Who fan who has listened to it ever since it started, because there is a hell of a lot of releases, and I'm really struggling to keep up with the ones I've actually bought and the recent releases. I'm struggling to keep up with them all. So I can, and with this release, I had to look up who the characters were and get a rough idea in my mind who they are. People like, is it Sally Morgan? I didn't know who she was. Or the Lysandra, whatever her name was, I didn't know who she was either. I had listened to a story with them in God and Monsters, which was like an epic story with the black and white TARDIS, which I hadn't listened to the previous story. I just listened to Gods and Monsters because I like Fenric and the Hemivores. So I have listened to a story with them, but that was a very long time ago. So some people I didn't know who they were. People I did know who they were, like Hex. I knew who Hex was, and Bernice Summerfield. I listened to quite a few of the Unbound Doctors with Bernice Summerfield, so I knew who she was. Of course, there's Mel Bush, of course, and Ace, of course. So there was a few characters I know, of course, the Master and Kane. I love the Crispy Master, with a decaying Master or Crispy Master. I like Geoffrey Beevor's portrayal of the Master. It's got that voice is it's so the Master, and I love it. So I love listening to Geoffrey Beevers as the Master, and he's good in it. We're introduced to I think there's a new character, as in the Mother, who's like a companion of the Master. Well, that's what it says on Wikipedia, but it doesn't come across that on the audio. And we have like a frog creature. I'm not sure if he's been in it before, but he was quite good as well. So there was a lot of characters in here, and if you weren't in the know or hadn't looked them up previously, you would get a bit confused. This story doesn't really benefit from the scene hopping as well. Like someone else said in a review, that if it was all like in one place, like we did, like they kind of did it with this release, but like an episode of like Hex and Sally's storyline, and then like an episode of the Doctor's storyline, which they did do. They did do a whole episode of the Doctor's storyline, and then doing like an episode of like Ace, that sort of thing, which they did kind of do, but I felt there was a lot of scene hopping around, and it got a bit confusing listening to it, because we're like, oh, we're in this scene, and then we'll talk to another scene. And it doesn't help that there's 2 Aces as well. So Sophie Aldred, very distinguished voice. And so you think, oh, is this the good Ace or the bad Ace, or oh, I'm here? And some of the scenes did transition over, and you think, oh, right, so we're talking here, and like, because you're not seeing it, you have to visualize it in your head, and if it's not clear which scene or where you are or what you need to visualize in your head, it's not good. So there was lots of scene hopping, which I didn't really like, because it got a bit confusing in that regard, and there were so many characters as well. And as I said in the beginning, the premise of the story is the Doctor's last day, and this is going to transition into his regeneration in the TV movie. And I didn't really get that. In this story, I didn't feel that this was anything to do with like his transition into the TV movie. I don't understand at all how there was nothing in the first part that even suggested that's what's going to happen. We have the evil Doctor trying to be good and controlling the universe to make it better, but it makes it worse. And it wasn't the best story release. It looked good on paper, but then again, it's not when you get into it, because it was just really confusing, and this alternate reality rubbish, which I hate. Alternate reality, like everybody has their memories wiped and they don't know who is who, and all this rubbish like that. I just didn't like that at all. And it was just a bit of a mess, really. And like the Doctor's evil, controlling the universe, and he has Ace as his evil companion. I don't understand how this is happening. And that's the thing as well. None of it gets like, you want to leave part one with some sort of satisfaction that you know the box set and you know what's roughly going on, but it doesn't end on anything. It's like it ends as like, all right, now put in the next disc. You know, like it's the continuation. Like they want you to get part 2 box set and go, and then put in the next disc in, which is not going to happen because that set's not coming out for a while. And so it doesn't work as a 2 box set thing, because it is a continuous story going from episode 1 to episode 12. And so there is no, this is one box set, this is another box set. There's no conclusion between the two, which I think really didn't work in this box set. What I did really like about this box set was that Ace was recruiting all these villains together, putting a team together to fight against the bad Doctor. And when we went to other scenes, like with Hex and Sally and Lysandra, whatever her name is, I was like, no, I want to get back to this sort of the recruitment of the villains and the team. Is like Suicide Squad, like helping, like they're all going on this mission and they're all interacting with each other. I want to get more back to that, because that was the exciting story. And then we kind of veer off onto other storylines. So I'm like, let's get back to this storyline, because that was the juicy storyline. And we kind of have Mel and Bernice going off in their own storyline. We have Hex and his daughter on another storyline with the president, who is Ace. And then we have like another storyline. And it gets really confusing. It was an okay release, not the best. I will be listening to part 2, but I just feel like it was very disjointed. It was confusing as well, and it wasn't very stimulating either. Didn't think. I enjoyed the bits where Ace was recruiting people, and it started off exciting, and then it kind of drearied off and went a bit boring, and then it was just a weird story, really. I've pre-ordered part 2 anyway, so I'm going to listen to part 2 whenever it comes out. But I just didn't think it was the best release, really. Anyway, that's my review of that last day. Thank you. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you soon.